Welcome to the Consultants Way podcast, your go-to resource for all things professional services consulting. Brought to you by McMann & Ransford, a strategy consulting firm with over 30 years of experience helping B2B organizations achieve sustainable growth, and the Consultants Way, the leading comprehensive consultant development program. Hosted by Dean McMann and Anthony Paluska, we share expert insights, firsthand experiences, and conversations with industry leaders on the topics that interest you most.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on this podcast are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of their employer, company, or affiliated organizations.
Welcome back to the Consultants Way podcast. I am Anthony Paluska. I'm here by myself today, no Dean, because we're doing something a little different, a bit of a special episode. So a week or so back, we attended the TSIA Envision conference. And for those that aren't familiar with it, we've had conversations with their professional services research leader over there over the years, Bo DiMuccio. But it's an organization that is focused on the services departments and the services functions embedded within large to mid-sized technology organizations. And they tend to have a pretty good finger on the pulse, both their research team and their leadership team, but also all of the members that are there attending these conferences on where the industry is headed and what things are happening. And so one thing we wanted to do for this session was we grabbed a couple of people that had attended and took slightly different journeys through what sessions they attended and what they saw. And I really wanted to compare notes essentially on key themes and takeaways that each of them had and the applicability of that, not just for their organization, but for everybody else. And so I grabbed, and you might recognize a couple of these names. I grabbed Brian Freeman, who's the VP of Professional Services at Xywave, Blake Jensen, the VP of Professional Services from Sochi, and then Jackie McMann from our McMann & Ransford consulting practice. And we had about an hour discussion on the different keys and trends and themes that we picked up on throughout this conversation. We touched on the rise of the FDE, the forward deployed engineer model, and how that looks different in the AI native companies versus the incumbents. We talked about different buckets and categories of AI investment and how that trend is shifting from those that are really just focused on capacity optimization relief of automating and offloading repeatable tasks to things that drive a lot more customer value. And then we spent a ton of time just thinking about where the industry is headed and the role that services plays in these companies at driving customer outcomes and truly making the customer experience what we've always said we wanted to be, which is customer centric. So really hope you enjoy this conversation. I thought it was great. I thought we touched on a bunch of different things. We could have gone a lot longer, but everybody had other places to go. So we ended up getting about an hour with the team and looking forward to sharing it with everybody. All right. Well, welcome everybody. We're going to dive right in here and break down the TSIA conference that we all attended here just a few weeks back and some key themes and some key takeaways. The first question I just want to get everybody's perspective on to frame this whole conversation is, hey, if there was anything that you were particularly interested in trying to understand when you attended the conference, so that'll help us all understand the kinds of sessions and the kinds of conversations you were looking for. And then the second part to that question is, what was the one or two things that you found most interesting, insightful, surprising as you either attended the sessions and if you're like me, right, most of those interesting and insightful things, not to discredit the quality of the content they provided, comes from all the sidebar conversations that you have with everybody else throughout that session. So, Brian, I'll hand it to you first. What were you looking to understand and solve for, and then what was one of the big takeaways or most surprising things for you?
Yeah, thanks, Anthony, and a pleasure to be here today. I think as we talked about, our goals of attending the conference and what we're trying to get out of it is probably twofold. One is, we all know, we hear the AI speak each and every day, right? It's out there everywhere. And I think, when you think about the services business, one of the things we were trying to understand is how are others leveraging AI, not just like from a product development perspective, but how are services organizations leveraging it to drive more efficiency in what they do, but also drive more value for their customers. So trying to get some ideas there and see, is what we're doing matching what others are doing? Are others taking it a step further, and we need to learn from that, et cetera. So that was probably part one. And then part two was really partially from an AI focus, but also just broadly and probably more generically, is what are others doing to continue to transform their services business and drive more and more value for their customers, but also drive more and more value internally from an ROI perspective, from a CFO perspective, et cetera, and really positioning services as a growth driver for the business. And how are people doing that? And what can we learn from others in that regard? So those were probably the two biggest things that we were trying to get up. And we actually kind of split the team up to kind of have those different focus areas and really kind of take certain tracks of sessions to really get us aligned on that. To me, what was the most kind of eye-opening thing that I got out of it was kind of, I think, a realization that in many ways, this is our time to shine. I think it's an opportunity for us to really reposition ourselves, to drive measurable value for our customers in our customers' eyes, and really position the services organization as the growth driver in SaaS. And using AI to enable that, not using AI to simply automate what we do today, but to free us up to be aspirational around how do we go about driving more value for our customers and strategically positioning services inside our business and with our customers as that value growth engine and the growth engine for the company. So that's a mouthful, and there's a lot to unpack there, but that was probably the biggest takeaway I had is thinking about how to do that, right? And what do we need to do to make that happen?
Yeah, and I want to dive into some of that because I got the same sentiment on a couple of different fronts, right? But the main thing that I always feel when I leave those events, and this one was even uniquely more in this way, which was everybody is there that has a services role or some sort of services objective for their business, and there is this real like kind of rallying cry that says services is and should be the growth driver for these organizations. I wonder a little bit, and we'll dive into this maybe a little bit, is as you take that message back to your organization and try and be the evangelist for making that case, how is that received, and what challenges do you run into when that group does not have that services lens to it? So I want to come back to that here in a second, but Blake, let's real quickly, if you can maybe do a quick intro on what you were hoping to get out of it, and then what surprised you about the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot like Brian, I think I was focused a lot on the transformation aspect of, I've grown up the past 8 to 10 years in the SaaS world, right? The per seat world. And a lot of that is changing. A lot of that is going agentic. I work at a company in Sochi where we are pivoting and going strictly agentic now. And with that, a lot of the transformation, a lot of the different roles, a lot of the way that we approach professional services is changing. And what I was really looking to do that from my lens and being there was to just hear more from everybody about how things are changing, how people are approaching it. I don't think anybody has the right answer per se, but just to listen more, because the last thing that anybody wants right now is to be left behind, right? To be lagging, to not be out in front of the new AI era and be, providing our customers a great experience in the newer, more agentic lens. So for me, right, we have traditional roles. We have traditional implementation roles, customer success management, traditional SaaS roles. And I think what some of the sessions and some of the takeaways and the biggest things for me was a lot of the feedback and a lot of sidebar conversations, I think, as well around, do we need to rethink the different roles that people play? Is there more of a rise of the jack of all trades role? When we may get to the forward deployed engineer a little bit later, and that's like the mountaintop of the different roles. But with the AI tools at our disposal, do we need specialized focused roles versus just jack of all trades? And is that a better customer experience if we do it that way? So just all things like that, I think, were my big takeaways, but really focusing on the transformation, And in my world, making sure that we're ahead of the curve and that we have the right roles, the right roles that people are playing, and that we have the right tools to enable them to succeed and provide our customers a great experience.
Yeah, nope. I think everybody's on a little bit of that transformational journey, and the closing session, and we'll talk about this here in a bit as well. The closing session was really focused on that concept of jack of all trades or centers of excellence, really, that span across all strategic services functions, and who spearheads that, who leads, who follows, because we can't have five different. I mean, from an overall customer experience perspective, and not to mention the efficiency for our organization, we can't have five people playing the advisor role to the client, right? If we're driving outcomes, the connection of all of the capabilities that we have to offer together actually gives the best customer outcome, but we don't need that delivered in silos where we're imposing our org chart onto our clients. So yeah, well, I want to dive into that certainly as well. Jackie, any different key takeaways? I mean, I think transformation is a key theme here, and how AI plays into that, both as an enabler and a reason to change, or the driver of change. But what were some of your key takeaways here?
Yeah, I think I'm right in line with what everyone's saying. I think a special interest of mine is seeing how the the roles and the org chart start to evolve. But one of the things that became really clear to me was this, all of the advancements in AI is enabling and in some ways forcing the legacy incumbents to truly become customer centric in a way that we've always said that we want to be, but this is really enabling that. So as we talk about the convergence of post sales roles, talk about this idea of actually having a single point of contact for customers. We heard about micro verticals, and of course, forward deployed engineers that are developing really tailored solutions that are exactly what customers are looking for. I was excited about this idea of customers being back at the center and that being a huge differentiator.
Yeah. Yeah, well, like you're kind of nodding your head and smiling over there. You want to chime in on that really quickly?
Like that was a really good way of putting it, right? For a long time, it was always like, don't go too custom. It's hard to maintain. And, a lot of us pushing like, no, best practice, do it this way. Don't customize to death, because who's going to document it 5 years from now when you need to change it? Who's going to be there to change it? That's kind of getting turned on its head a little bit now, in some ways, with the flexibility and a lot of these AI tools and coming. I think JB called it like the toolbox. I forget the term that he used, but like, here's our toolbox and here's our forward deployed engineer or somebody, and then gathering requirements specifically for that customer and purpose building it for them. In some ways, it feels like we're back to a custom build type scenario for customers, which is very, very interesting when you think about it that way, because of like, a lot of these big enterprise software companies kind of tabled a lot of the custom built solutions that these big organizations had that were purpose built for them to go more of the larger SaaS realm,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, so let's just dive right into that topic of the forward deployed engineer model, but also this concept of, and this is a thing, and not surprising that Jackie, that jumped out to you, right? It's been a thing that we as a firm have been on for a long time, and the SaaS organization, to your point, or the SaaS organizations in the SaaS industry had kind of stayed away from that, right? We would verticalize and we would specialize in the development of our solutions, but we didn't want to go too far down the route of customization and custom coding, because then, right, who's going to support it? How are we going to maintain it? Does it live in somebody's head or on somebody's computer? How does that get rolled back into the product from a support perspective? There's all the complexities associated with that don't exist if you were just a pure play services firm or an advisory firm within like a legacy hardware company. But we always kind of thought about this as, you have a couple of different differentiation models, right? There's the technological superiority model, there's the low cost kind of model, and then we would always have historically called it the customer intimacy model, which was, all right, if you're differentiating based on what your customers need, you're designing your solutions there, you know what they need before they know what they need, and you're constantly evolving and iterating there, you'll be differentiated much longer because you've built a bigger moat around you. And I use that as framing because I want to tee up this FDE concept, because I kind of heard two separate models here. One is they painted a picture that the AI native organizations are using the FDEs to essentially go out and find product market fit, right? They don't know the industry. They don't have the relationships that you all have with your customers in your markets. They don't have the domain expertise, but they're smart and they have this toolbox, and we're going to deploy, and they have big pockets, right, to go and spend and use these resources. So we're going to just deploy these resources in search of product market fit. We're going to find it. We're going to scale and commercialize a new product and offer, and then we're going to move on to the next one, right, and do that way. So that's one model. The other model is, I heard a lot of the incumbent organizations, as they'd call it, using the forward deployed engineers as a mechanism to do exactly what you just talked about, Blake, which is, hey, let's go in there and essentially let's do this custom coding to build new features, to build a new product, to make ourselves stickier and increase the value prop of our product, but intentionally roll that back into our existing product. So we already think we have product market fit. Now we're solving for the fringes so that we're a better fit for these organizations, these fringe use cases. But in both of those cases, I mean, my big concern is always, how far removed do we get from the customer over time, right? Like the AI native model is are we just going to deploy it and then move on? It does seem like the model that the incumbents are using is much more built around what the customer needs and what our segment needs long term. So Brian, I said a lot there, and so I'll kind of tee it up to you to react to maybe just this broader concept of the different models people are using the same term FDEs for, and what are we actually trying to solve for? Right. And maybe that's your organization, or maybe that's conversations you were having.
Yeah, I mean, so I think it's interesting. The incumbent model to me feels more sustainable but it's also a very hard skill set because you need someone who is super technical, who understands product management skill sets, who understands client service skill sets, who understands the domain that the client is in. It is like a unicorn, right? And so I think incumbent on all of us is, if an organization wants to go to the FDE model, how do we generate that skill set in our people? Where does the talent come from? How do we tap into that? Or is it not just one FDE that gets deployed? Is it a combo, right? Where you need complementary skill sets amongst 2 or 3 people that get forward deployed to round out all those edges. I think that's a really big challenge, right? I mean, we were talking about it at TSIA, like, oh, just take your best person and land them at the customer site, right?
Just embed them there and let them live there and let them be part of it. And yeah,
they'll figure it out, right?
That's a challenge for so many reasons.
Yeah. So I think conceptually it makes a lot of sense, because you can get closer to the customer, closer to the use cases that they care about, and closer to evaluating, how do I make that fit for all my customers, right? And take it back into product where it's something I can sustain and maintain and enhance over time. So that makes perfect sense to me. I think it's a big people challenge, though.
Yeah.
How do you prioritize the right people to go do that? Because then you're taking them off other stuff. And it's got to be a central part of your AI strategy. FDE has to be that for you to be successful to I think, make that pivot.
Right. And so, Blake, curious your thoughts on the people challenge associated with that, but also you heard a bunch of different models of where the FDEs live organizationally. Are they in professional services because they're more naturally like that? Are they in the product business? Are there pros and cons, in your opinion, to both kind of where they sit and then, how you develop them and what you pull them out of their existing day jobs?
Yeah. And it's funny. I was sitting at the table in the session that you were a part of, Anthony, at the end, grading like with ideas that people came up with. And I think it was either, Sienna or Sierra, the telecom company. And, I was talking with those guys, and it was pretty funny. They were really sharp guys. And they were like, oh, I'd never heard of forward deployed engineer before. But they're like, sounds a lot like something we already have. in like solution architects or very technical resources. And I was like, yeah, everyone's just coming up with a new little buzzword of a forward deployed engineer. And it's just, essentially, to Brian's point, you take like some of your most talented, smartest, know the product inside and out, very technical, are able to think outside of the box that, again, I know as more of like a solution architect or something along those lines. And you're giving them free rein to go in on site with your customers and really go a lot more in depth than we had previously. And in a lot of the incumbents, it's all right, here's how our product had worked. Here is now how our more agentic or our AI portion works. Here's the possibilities. Let's piece it all together to create you all a great solution that's going to provide even more value than what it had previously. And I think that's a lot of what the sales forces are doing when they're converting customers to agent force and things of that nature. The incumbent is like taking a role like that. So I don't think the role is reinventing the wheel, but I think what it's saying is, oh yeah, just put somebody in there. And then, to Brian's point with the skill set, they got to know your product inside and out. They got to be very technical. They got to be at some levels a project manager too, keeping track of everything. They got to be great client facing because they're sitting on site with customers in person. So there's going to be some level of energy that they're going to need to bring to the table as well. So and then you take a step back and I'm like, yeah, I know who those people would be. They're 5 of the most talented people I've ever worked with at the companies that are probably, CTOs now or chief product officers. So there is a little bit of like a talent gap. So for me, what I'm trying to equate it to is like forward deployed engineer is just kind of adding capabilities to what I know as more of like a solution architect per se. That's a little bit more client facing as well.
Yeah, it's a good analogy for it because like I've seen, I'm sure you all have seen the really good solution architects out there that don't just understand the technical aspects of it, but can actually do the client facing things and can the most important piece to that role. And I think to what you're describing there is the ability to understand the client's challenges and pain points in a way that is at a level of detail that they can say, not only do I understand this, but you probably haven't even thought about solving it in this way. And let me tell you how our solution can be architected in order to make that happen. And so it's like helping them realize the possible is this gift of really, really gifted solution architects. And those people end up being called on every sales call that happens. And they're the best closers in our team. And they're not paid that way necessarily, but they're the most valuable resource and probably underappreciated, like from certain levels, resource that we have in the business. And yeah, the ones that are really good grow up and get big jobs, and they're some of the most talented people that we have. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've seen it to your point of where do they live in the organization? They generally start to make their ways into sales to pre-sales because they're so good in those situations, right? But one of the things about the forward deployed engineer, one of the really interesting things for me when I think about professional services and changes is they like at a lot of these companies, Palantir is like the big, huge example. But, when I hear about like the Sienna, the agent company, and like a lot of these, I think what they're doing is those people are embedded pre-sales and then they go all the way through to post-sales and develop the solution too. So they're with you the whole entire time, which generally we're used to handoffs, right? And I think in scenarios like this, you're taking a role that's blending the pre-sales all the way into the post-sales. And I'm assuming, a lot of those resources, some may be monetizing that service, some may not be. But that is very interesting as to how that works when they're going all the way from pre-sales into the post-sale delivery and you're with them all the way through.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's really applying, right, to lean into the professional services, the consulting side of things, right? The principal level where you're finding, you may not find it, but you are generating the opportunity and then you're managing that client to see the results of that opportunity. And so you're doing delivery and client management and sales and all of those things all together because they are buying into the trust and the expertise that you have at the front end, and you have to carry that through towards the end. Yeah, I'm going to change gears a little bit here, and I'm going to talk about the org convergence because we're talking about where FDEs live in some of these things. I alluded to this. They talked about it. You guys have even teed it up at the beginning of this, but Jackie, this was your key point here, which is right in this world where whether it's forward deployed engineers or not, right? You heard about a lot of these converging functions. Right, offer management being a centralized center of excellence that might span across a bunch of post sales functions, all sorts of things like that. Other than the keynote at the end of the session that we had, where they were making this case that this is coming and organizations are already reorganizing as a result of this, did you have any other conversations or any other insights on, okay, is this happening? How real is this? How far along the journey are organizations? What were you picking up on, Jackie, or what's your belief on that?
Yeah, so I split my time between PS and CS sessions, and I will say, I mean, the turf war is a bit real right now. The exact same conversations are happening in both in terms of how do we expand our capabilities, our advisor capabilities, and for the CS world, our technical capabilities, so that we can be that advisor, that single point of contact in some cases. And you can almost see it's like a marketing pitch for each group for why they have the right skill sets to really step up and be that. And I mean, the truth will fall where it falls. I think the people that have that combination of skills to really advise clients are the ones that are going to rise to the top, regardless of which function they come from. But I mean, I definitely think strides are being made. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but customers want it. Customers have always been asking for a post-sales single point of contact. I don't want a CS, an account manager, PS team in here, project managers, support staff. I want to know the one person I can call that can handle things for me. And I really do feel like we are giving more technical capabilities in the hands of non-technical people right now. And so that enables them to do a lot more for customers, and people really want to take advantage of that. I don't see, a lot of conversations about people actually moving towards a model where there's a true single point of contact yet. But I think that is the thought process and where people are experimenting. And then in general, right, looking at across your delivery models and the services side, you have a capability of sharing resources in a way that might not have been possible before across PS and managed services and things like that. And so I definitely think there's a lot of experimentation. And yeah, like I said, it was very interesting to hear the exact same conversations happening on both sides.
Yeah. Brian, I'm going to be interested in your thoughts on this, but I did sit in one of those CS sessions too, and they were talking about, well, we do consulting work and we'll do this, and it was all part of the CS model that somebody was promoting as a value add to their organization. And of course, it's a value add, but it does end up infringing on a lot of our other functions. So, Brian, how are you seeing this convergence happening? Maybe not at your organization necessarily, but just in the broader market and through conversations you've been having.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a big challenge, right? And I think we all run into it, right? Because everyone is, I think, assuming positive intent, right? Everyone is trying to drive value for their customers, right? That's what everyone's trying to do to, grow the company, improve retention, all the important metrics that go into a SaaS business, right? And so everyone's kind of dialed into how do I contribute to that, which is the right mindset. I think fundamentally, the charter of a PS organization is easier to understand because we've grown up in the foundation of kind of project delivery and change delivery, right? The charter of a customer success organization, I think, is much harder and a lot less clear, because I think it differs organization to organization. And sometimes it's about driving value. Sometimes it's more of a commercial orientation. Sometimes it's, I'm just your single point of contact. Call me for anything you want, escalations, whatever it is, right? And I think that's where it gets a little tricky. And I think there's still a lot of, even in today's day and age, even though customer success has been around for 10, 20 years now, there's a lot of content out there, influencers out there who who are still going back to the central challenge of what is customer success and why does customer success exist? What is their charter? And even I think when you look inside organizations, it's unclear, right? What is the charter of customer success? And so I think, to me, a way to navigate this is to work on defining the charter of customer success, comparing that to the charter of professional services, comparing that to the charter to support, comparing that to the charter of sales, account management, et cetera, and linking those two together to see where do you have overlaps and how do you solve it. But without having the charter of each of those departments, it's hard to start because no one knows why they exist.
Right. And I bet if you asked, maybe not your organization, but you go to pick a random organization out of the hat that was in attendance there, and you ask their CS team what their PS team's charter was, right? I mean, there is, even if we as leaders of our individual functions have defined it, we probably haven't communicated in a way where everybody understands it or agrees with it, right? Yeah. And so there is this, as all of these businesses in this evolution or transformation that you all talked about at the beginning occurs, right? As this is happening, we all have a little bit of an identity crisis of what's our role in the organization today, what's our role in the organization in the future, and how do we navigate that shift with everybody else in mind? Blake, anything you want to chime in and add on this topic of sort of Jackie called it the turf war, but it's just this tension that exists a little bit where everybody's trying to add value, but maybe not doing that in an aligned way.
Yeah, because everybody's trying to position their teams as the ones that are going to be, the value drivers for customers. And it's going to be like why it's the most important role for the next 10, 20 years, right? And the customer success topic, I always take a step back and say, this term kind of came about with the rise of SaaS because it was seat-based pricing and you wanted customers to use the seats they bought. And you wanted them to log into your platform and do the actions that equated to the value, associate it so that you would get a renewal or an upsell. So you called it more of this customer success means, right? And it does, to your point, Brian, all different companies have different charters as to what that means. Some of it's really account managers. So it's been around forever, and there are your account managers because they own the financials as well, combined with making sure that the customers are adopting our product and having a great experience post-sale, which there's a lot that goes into that, right? Others, they separate the commercials, and it's truly more of like adoption specialists and really focusing there. But it is the customer success kind of like gets thrown around there. And those are the two big separations from my perspective of like the financials and account management and then the adoption aspect of it. But you always just look at it through the customer lens of I don't want to talk to 5 people. I want to talk to one person who knows the product, that can equate it to value, that is responsive. And when they don't know the answer, they can get the right person to get the answer in a very quick time frame. And whether you call that customer success or whether you call that not, right? With all of the AI tools that are available to us today, it is so much easier for that to come from one person now, right? To that, and that can be, we have our implementation professional services team, and then it can be a secondary team as well. But I do think like there isn't a need for the 4 or 5 specialized role because we have so many tools to make it easier for people to be able to do that.
Yep. And I'll add one thing to what you said there, which is kind of which is that single point of contact needs to be exactly what the customer needs, right? I maintain the fact that customer centricity is even more and more so. We've said it for a long time, but now we actually should mean it when we're behaving and making some decisions. But that person also should have the organization's goals in mind as well about what we want to do with this account. Because I do see often somebody's chartered with doing exactly what you said and making sure the customer gets all the answers, and we've assigned that person, but they're giving away a lot of our services for free, or they're doing right. I mean, they are in the customer satisfaction business, not in the help our business, right? And we have to be customer centric, but we also have to make sure that we draw some boundaries around what is and isn't included in what they've already paid for, and make sure that we're routing things and selling things appropriately. And that means they have to understand, if it is CS, how PS prices and how PS works, and when to pull professional services in, and when a managed service is actually needed instead of this is just included in your general contract. So there's that additional piece that I think sometimes is overlooked, as we almost skew too far to just trying to solve make sure the customer's happy and make sure that they have one point of contact. We're going to shift gears a little bit, because we started this whole thing with talking about transformation and AI, and we'd be remiss not to dive a little bit deeper into this. When I was at the TSIA conference in May, and I shared this when I was on stage in the room that you guys were, or that all three of you were in, every single person I talked to was there because they felt like they were falling behind in AI investments, and they wanted to know what everybody else was doing. And when you probed into that a little bit, you said, okay, well, if everybody feels like they're behind, they're not really behind. But fast forward 6 months and a lot's changed. And the things that people seemed to implement quickly they look and feel the same. So I've been thinking about this in 3 groups. You guys can tell me that you think about it slightly differently, but I think there's really 3 categories of investments that have happened. And this is kind of I'll do it in the order of which most people are talking about. So the most people, when I say AI initially, they're on efficiency and capacity relief. They might talk about it in terms of freeing up our consultants' time to do more strategic customer-facing advisory work. But at the end of the day, they are reducing the number of hours spent on repeatable tasks that can reduce cost in some form or fashion. The second bucket is customer outcome enablement. So using AI to measure, attribute, accelerate value delivery, speed up time to value, do those kinds of things, not in the interest of relieving cost or capacity, but truly to get a customer a better, faster outcome. And then the third bucket is, I call it kind of strategic growth related. And so that's using AI for market insights on the propensity to buy the next service offering, or what we should be selling and building as our next offer, or even embedding AI in our solutions to deliver new things and actually sell AI embedded or automation embedded solutions. So some of the agentic kinds of services that might exist there. But that seems to be the different sections of investment. And it seems like people have kind of mastered the first one. They might not have got it all right, but they've accepted we need to do this because maybe they've had mandates to cut costs or do whatever the case is. The second and third one, I think, are the biggest opportunities for us still, but they're the most untapped. So Brian, I don't know how you feel about that framework, or if you'd agree that those 2 categories are untapped, but curious how you view that. And then, right, if you heard something that fell into group 2 or 3 that you thought might be useful or interesting for an organization like yours, or maybe for others.
Yeah, no, I like the framework a lot. It helps me kind of digest it and even communicate it. So I agree. I think, look, the category 1, call it AI, call it automation, call it whatever you want to call it. It's been around. It was
RPA before it was AI, right? It was.
Yeah. So it just we're changing taglines on it, but it's been around for years. It's something that will always be here, that we're always moving the needle on, right? Categories 2 and 3, I think, are becoming the focus, and especially as you think about a lot of what we talked about at the conference, was really getting to truly kind of outcome-based, value-based things for our customers, right? So moving away from, okay, I've now executed the 100 tasks on my project plan, therefore project is done, to, okay, project is done when I've produced the value I committed to producing for your business, right? And I feel like we're all moving in that direction, but we all have a long way to go to get there, because not only do you have to reorient how you execute and what defines success, but to your point, Anthony, you got to be able to measure it, and you got to be able to measure the right things. And so that requires technology advancement. It requires collaboration with your R&D teams to say, can I measure these outcomes in the product? Do I have to go outside the product? Do I have to get a proxy to measure what the customer really wants? But I got to find a different way to kind of get close to that. And I think that's where a lot of the evolution comes in. And that's where I think frankly, there's an opportunity to reposition the services side of every SaaS business along those lines to make the services side of the business way more strategic in nature around both driving value for our customers in a measurable way, but in a accountability way, but also using that as a way to drive expansion within each and every account. Because as soon as you start driving measurable value, your opportunity to expand that account gets way more clear. And so I think as we pivot to that, that becomes way more of a big focus for all of us. But I think it's still very early innings in that regard.
Yeah, it's definitely early innings. Although I think I was talking to somebody about this one evening, and they said for the last 7 years, they've been going to the TSIA conferences and they've been saying outcome offers are the future. We need outcome offers. We need outcome offers. And somebody asked a question to somebody that does offer management or I can't remember, one of the practice leaders. And they said, what percentage of revenue today is generated from outcome offers? And it was like 5.8% or something of all revenue and services business generated from outcome offers. So we've been talking about it forever, but to the point that the challenge is it's not just changing our pricing model or our offer model, it's changing everything about how we deliver and how we track and how the technology, and AI gives us a leg up and an opportunity to do some more of those things. Blake, how are you thinking about AI across those couple of categories?
I think it's a great way to put it, because yes, that like the first bucket has always been there. It's like RPA, like I know, like I think of it like the Zapiers of the world. There's so many infrastructures that can do that, and there's so many ways in which you can flow, diagram, and automate, right? When we think about all these AI pilots that are out there and how they're all like failing or they're not moving forward, I think of it because it's in that second and third bucket that you talked about. And there's this idea of the outcome and value that all of these new AI companies that are raising money, that are going to companies, are able to provide, but a lot of them fail and they don't go through successfully because at the end of it, it's very hard to quantify or measure the outcome and value that you're actually getting from this tool that's not just time or cost savings. And that we even as a company with our agents that we're offering to multi-location enterprise brands, right? It's if you get 100% adoption of this tool by all of your local franchises, this is the outcome that you will be able to get with 100% review responses, or every one of your locations will be creating social posts. And then this is what the value means to you. That's what everybody's looking for, right? That's what, when I go to TSIA and I talk to others, it's not the automation stuff. It's like, have you found a tool that can, really provide these type of outcomes, and it's really like affecting your organization a ton and bringing a lot of value to you guys? I think it's the way that you bucketed them, Anthony. Like the 2 and 3 is what everybody wants to know, what's been successful. Where have you done it? Because all I hear about is a lot of the pilots are failing and or not moving forward because you can't equate them to value.
Yep. No, I think that's right. And I think everybody's experiences and examples of those are going to really expand over the next 3 months, 6 months, year. I mean, it's happening really quickly. There's a stark difference in the conversations people were having about this 6 months ago and now with the same community of people. So, all right, I want to be sensitive to everybody's time here. I want to try and close this thing out with it's a little bit of a choose your own adventure on how you want to wrap this one up. So I have 3 questions. Pick one, answer it. First one goes back to Brian's original question or original statement, which was, hey, there was, it's the era of services. And I made the comment that what happens when we take that back to our organization? How is that received? And so curious how that's being received, or how you're communicating and conveying some of the messages and the rallying cries from TSIA back to your non-services counterparts within your organization. So interested in that. The second one is, hey, speak to the people that weren't there, right? What's the one thing that we haven't talked about yet that you think they should be taking back to their leadership teams and advocating for? Or the third question is, what do you think we'll be talking about next year at this time on the heels of the TSIA conference that we aren't talking about at all today? So that one's a little bit of the crystal ball. And so, Jackie, I'll let you go first. So how do we convey this to our broader community? We all believe that services has this more significant role to play, but how do we do it? Second one is, what's a key message for those that weren't there? And then the third being, hey, what's this conversation look like next year for us?
Yeah, it's interesting, Anthony, because my key message, I'm taking your second one, and it's actually very similar to the same one that I gave talking to you after the last TSIA conference, which is everyone feels like they're behind on making AI investments or worried about making, the big investment, and there's a lot of wait and see happening. But I think more than ever, what's true is it's time to do those pilots and to test things. It's time to take a look at your roles and how you're organized internally and see if you can get creative with how AI can supplement that and fundamentally change the way you look at your organization. I do not think the wait and see is the right play right now. And so I encourage everyone, if you're not in these spaces and you're not having these conversations, to continue testing and experimenting with AI, because it's not the time to be left behind.
Yeah. Yep. Progress is better than perfection on a lot of these things.
Exactly.
Brian?
And real quick, I'll add that the 95% that are failing, I think a lot of that's trial and error. I mean, some of this is kind of built to fail, right? So don't be afraid of trying a pilot that doesn't go through.
Yep. Brian?
Yeah, so I'll take maybe question 3. What will we be talking about next year? And I'll play back what we've already talked about, which I hope and suspect that next year it won't be as AI heavy, but there'll be a key component of it that is AI heavy, but it'll be back to the customer. And what we just talked about, how are people demonstrating value to a customer? And because that was a key message in this year's conference, but I don't feel like we dove into that piece of the message deeply because we were so focused on AI and what are people doing with AI? Am I behind? What do I need to do differently, et cetera? But as we think about an outcome-based customer, how do we get there? And how does AI help us? But what else do we need to do to truly get to be outcome-based measures and then holding ourselves accountable for producing those outcomes?
Yeah, no, that's a great, I hope so too. We get very enamored with the how of AI and we ignore a little bit of the why we're doing it and everything else that has to surround just that topic of AI. Hopefully AI just becomes part of the way we're operating and it just becomes another tool and we're just talking about that as an asset we can use to deliver on the why, and it's just a combination of some things. But right now it is the all-consuming focal point. Blake?
Yeah, so I'll give you the recap for those that weren't there and what to think about, right? And I would say still resonating with me when JB clearly articulated your CFO is going to come and they are going to say, with AI, we can save money here. And everybody's probably already had that happen, or it's going to be coming more and more. And with that, right, you need to be able to clearly articulate why that money should still be repurposed to your respective team, in particular in professional services, as to the impact and outcomes that your team is going to be able to have and why we deserve that investment. And I think everything we talked about on this call here today is the why of, we know the product inside and out, we know the value prop inside and out, and we're consultants and professional services by nature. So investing with us in our toolbox to provide the experience that our customers want. And I think there's a lot wrapped up in that, but you got to be able to very clearly articulate that story and think about it and practice it, because it's coming if it hasn't yet already.
Yeah.
I would also add into that I think now is a great time to we talked about charters a little earlier. Now's a great time to dust off your charter and see, does it still make sense, and get that executive level alignment, cross-functional alignment across your organization, because you can start repositioning your department, your team as a value driver, expansion driver through your charter, as a way to kind of start repositioning PS in terms of why you exist, what your primary purpose is.
Yeah, no, it's a good one. And it's amazing how you think you've got alignment on that, and then you just don't, right? So much time has passed, or things have evolved, or you've evolved beyond your charter and you're actually doing things outside of it. I would say, and we've helped organizations with charters for a long time, but in the last 3 months in particular, there's been this really intentional focus where we've looked at a lot of these organizations and we've dove into it, and the PS leader thinks that they had a charter in place, and how they're actually operating and decisions they're making actually are falling totally outside the bounds of that. And they're jumping straight to execution without saying, well, how does that actually fit into my strategic objectives here? And so it's been the last 3 months of work that we've done with organizations on that topic has just been surprising, because stuff moved so quickly and we just had to act. And now it's a good time to do a quick reset on, okay, are we actually acting in a way that's aligned to what we are now or what we want to be in the future? So I think it's a great ad at the end. So thank you guys. Thanks everybody for joining. This is great. It was therapeutic in some ways. We all had different experiences but we all kind of came away with some of the same takeaways. So I'm glad we did this, and looking forward to sharing it with others. So I appreciate the time and the insights from you all.
All right. Thanks for having us.
Appreciate it, guys.
Thanks, Anthony.
Well, thanks for checking that out. Like I said, I really enjoyed the conversation. Hope you all enjoyed it as well. If you do, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment on this particular episode and let us know what you like. If you enjoyed this, we'll do a lot more things like this, more of the roundtable discussion, or a bit of debrief on kind of industry sessions or trends with some of our PS leaders in our network. If you miss Dean, reach out to him on LinkedIn. Tell him that you want him to come back and join the next time. He will be back next time we have an interview with somebody. If you have anything you would like to share with me, you can always find me on my respective LinkedIn page as well. Or you can email the show at podcast@consultantsway.com. Really looking forward to hearing everybody's feedback on this one. I enjoyed it, and I hope you do as well.